So the first wine we have 2019 Sauvignon Blanc. I mean, for me, it's always been, I guess, one of my favourite Sauvignon Blancs, really in Australia. I think because of the complexity that comes from the winemaking as well. What do we all think of this particular wine?
I'll go with you as well. I'll follow quickly on that, and it has also been one of my favourite Sauvignon Blancs over the last 5, 6, 7 years or so as well. Coming from the Adelaide Hills, where you saw that region develop a style that was post New Zealand in a sense, and then to see a wine like this that has so much more character and depth to it. And yes, as you say, it's in the winemaking, a lot of it as well. But obviously that site and the length of ripening time and all the other things that go into it, I really have always loved that wine, and I do to this year as well. So I just think it's just got a lot more going for it, a lot more interest than your usual commercial punch in the nose kind of Sauvignon Blanc.
And Andrea, from a global perspective, how do you see this one?
Well, I think when I saw this wine, what struck me so much was the balance of the wine. And I think there's so much Sauvignon Blanc that's not balanced, that the acidity is too high, raspy and jutting out. And that's something I see a lot of in, obviously, New Zealand and certain other Australian producers. But it can also be a component in Sancerre. Sometimes the acidity is just out of whack. And here, I think with this wine, there's a beautiful balance, and there's a brightness and a freshness and a zesty intensity, which consumers expect of Sauvignon Blanc. It's one of the best sellers globally because of that bright, vibrant, forward fruit intensity. And this wine has that, but it also has some textural complexity and some great balance and more depth, as Tony said as well.
I mean, Shante, for this wine, in terms of, I love this wine as a food wine. I think in terms of its textural richness and its complexity. I mean, for you, at Key, this kind of wine, how does it sit within the kind of thing that you do every day?
Yeah, I mean, a style that has always stood out to me, I think, talking about having a little bit of time in the demi-muise, but also that little bit of lees aging. We talked about texture, but it's a wine that also ticks the boxes for a broader audience as well. So even though you've got these lovely ripe fruit characters, that lovely kind of acidity, I think it ticks a lot of boxes for people that want a complex Sauvignon Blanc, but also people that, perhaps just want to order something that they can have on by the glass that matches with quite a few different items of seafood and things like that. So it's a very complex wine with lovely nuances, but at the same time, I love the ripeness that it has as well. It's not mean, it's not harsh, it's not too tropical. And like we said, that lovely kind of pithy texture that's built into the wine. Works for me.
May I ask a question also? Sorry, Ken. I just wanted to ask a question about of Xavier more than anything about. I mean, this is not a $20 commercial Sauvignon Blanc. It's a Sauvignon Blanc that is double and a bit more that price in a sense. So, what is the market like for what is the consumer expectation of a Sauvignon Blanc that is at that price? I mean, is there a thirst for that kind of wine at that price?
So I made my life very hard. First, I'm based in Ratonbouly, so that's not easy. But then I make a top-end Sauvignon Blanc, which is even harder. But the thing is, it's better to be have your own lane in a sense, and work. The problem of working in a bigger and in the Chardonnay League or is that your wine can be often forgotten or not noticed, whereas because there's not many people who actually bother working with that variety for a lot of reasons, and mainly the fact that it's too commercial in the mind of people. And we have that vineyard, which is one of the best vineyard you can think of for Sauvignon Blanc. It's got the right aspect. It's it's cool, but it's not too cool. You can really ripen the fruit, get rid of the green characters, and make a really beautiful. The fruit is amazing when we pick it. The pickers actually take always some bunches back home for dinner generally, which I always noticed, which means that the fruit is delicious when it's picked, but it's which is where the fruit comes from. But in terms of sales, it's not easy, but it's fascinating to actually try to explain to people, well, think again if you think Sauvignon Blanc is bad. And I personally have been through the same process when I started, because I didn't like Sauvignon Blanc very much. There's a couple from New Zealand that I liked, but then I met Pascal Cottard in Sancerre, who imports his wines. And he showed me some wines from the 90s, which was just sublime, just like for me, like Premier Cru Chardonnay from from Puligny, very same texture, of course more in the limey and lighter and leaner style, but it's and that's when I thought, well, if they can do it, we can. I mean, it's very, it doesn't take much to convince people when you have a good product that they should buy it. It's a bit more hard work. So we are not following trends, but it's a fascinating experience. We've had very good response on the wine over the years. Sometimes we have to do some deals in airlines to move some stock, so we did that a couple of times, but it's generally going in business or even first class. And the last time we did that, we had a panel of French sommelier and tasting the wines, and actually they loved it. And so it's a fascinating variety, Sauvignon Blanc. I think it's not fashionable, but if you make it well, it's a world-class wine. It's really up there in terms of quality. I think for me, it's halfway between Riesling and Chardonnay in terms of texture, fruit, intensity, elegance, sharpness, of acidity, etc. So it's a really fun wine to make and to sell actually as well.
My question was actually going to be very similar to that, except I was going to ask Shante and Melissa, do they get any resistance? I mean, I think it's what, 50 in a retail, I don't know what that would be in your restaurants, but it would be a fair bit more than that, I assume. Do you get resistance for a Sauvignon Blanc at that price, or I mean, is it hard to sell in your restaurants?
I think certainly for me, I find that with Sauvignon Blanc like this, that is of quality, like Cotat, for example, or Sancerre, or for wines like, I'm thinking of, really premium things. I think people understand it. I think the days of people ordering Sauv Blanc as the sort of common or garden drink have kind of been replaced by rosé. I think people expect probably rosé in restaurants now to be kind of cheap and cheerful. Whereas I find certainly in the restaurants that I tend to work in, that people are kind of seeking out wines that they don't mind spending the money as long as the quality's there, and Sauvignon Blanc is no exception, especially with these wines. I mean, Terre Crayères had a long history with Merivale. We've been very excited supporters of the wines, and I think the price, really, people are starting to realize that it's not about the price, it's about the quality, and they know the wines now.